Welcome back to the Nate Winky podcast, and today I got Chase Gallagher here. Thanks for coming on, Chase.
Nate, thank you for having me.
For sure. So we were talking. I came across your page probably a month or so back, and I'm like, hey, this guy owns a landscaping company. I own a landscaping company, and I got a podcast, so it'd be fun to collab and kind of see what's going on, and hopefully have some interesting points for different people to listen to. So first question, I guess, is just like, what made you start the landscaping company? What was the process like? When did that happen? What was the impetus for it? What was going on there?
Yeah, so I started when I was 13. I had been doing chores for a number of years, and I just kind of like maxed out just doing chores for my parents, and I wanted to make more money. So that's when I started my lawn care business. Originally, it was actually called Buzz Cut Lawn Care, and I passed out like thousands of flyers across, like, there's 3 big neighborhoods I live in, and that's where I got my start. So passed out flyers the first year, and I think this was actually when I was 12. I was obviously home for the summer. It was like one of the first years that I was like home for the summer instead of doing like a summer camp, and so that's when I started doing these flyers. So my first summer, I had gotten 2 jobs. One was to mow a lawn, a one-time mow for $40, and the other was to do some weeding for a house for $40. So then that was when I was 12. Then 13, I kind of went more all in on that, and passed out the thousands of flyers. My first season, I got rid of like the riding mower, picked up like 13 mowing clients, and then just kind of grew it from there.
Nice. What was like? Did your parents help you out with like transportation and stuff, or how were you able to just like walk account to account kind of thing? Was it that close?
Yeah, so it was that close. When I was 12, I drove my tractor to the job sites in my neighborhood.
Nice.
And then when I was 13, my brother had an SUV, and so he was just getting his license, him and his friends. So he actually didn't have his license yet, but he had an SUV, and so basically I had the trailer, I had the zero turn. I had U-Haul install a $400 hitch on it, and that's how I basically hired his buddies to start, and then it was my brother that had a license to just drive me. Like literally, it was 3 or 4 neighborhoods is how I got myself around from obviously 13 to when I had gotten my license 16 and a half.
Nice. Okay. And then what was the process? So you started out with lawn care, and then over time, from what I gathered, you basically switched to exclusively landscaping. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Yep. And then when did that switch happen, would you say, in that process?
So the switch occurred when I was 18 years old. To give you some background on that, when I was, let's call it 15, I was probably 15. My business was going. I had like 15 to 17 lawn mowing accounts. And one of my brother's buddies reached out to us because he saw that we were doing this. It was like, hey, my boss needs some help with his landscaping business. And mine wasn't full time at the time. So my brother and I both went and worked for this guy named Wes. And Wes was obviously a lot older than us. He's 45 now. So I worked with him from when I was 15 to 16, 17. I was probably 17. So the point of me telling you this is I got around older guys in the industry. So I'd go to work for him every single day and just learn about, like, in the moment, Nate, like this is what you realize later on. In the moment, you don't realize like you're actually learning stuff. You don't realize like, oh, you should use an edging shovel for that type of project, or the tractor for this, or something like that. So long story short, I kept listening to Wes, and he'd broken his leg. It was just basically me and him at the end of it. He'd broken his leg on some snowboarding thing and sold his business to a large outfit locally. So, but he always told me, get out of lawn mowing. There's no money in it. So I listened to him when I was 18, sold the list, sold, the equipment, and picked up a John Deere tractor, a landscape tractor, and solely went into what I call project-based work.
Gotcha. Okay. So that's huge. When you have someone in the industry that can give you pointers, even like you're saying, you didn't even necessarily recognize that you were learning, but it was that experience that you could then draw on later to avoid some of those like easy mistakes that, because you had that person to kind of show you, you're able to kind of avoid some of those mistakes that otherwise you wouldn't have been. And was his focus when he was pushing you towards the landscaping, was that purely based upon the margins?
It was. I think it was 100% on the margins. It was on the clientele, the margins. Those two things. Basically, in simple guy terms, the mowing was a pain in the ass, didn't make you much money. The project-based work is way more profitable. Him and his tractor and me could go out and bring in, back then $2,000 in a day, $2,500 in a day, versus me and him mowing lawns was probably 800 to 1,000.
Yeah, no, that's easy math right there. Okay, and then you've taken that and you have one crew, two crews. What does your operation look like right now for the landscaping world?
So we have two crews. My total infield labor is about 7 guys, actually, and one female out of that. But we have two crews. So sometimes I'll run like 4 and 3, or just a spring cleanup crew and a hardscape crew, that type of thing.
Yep.
But I did want to go back on that. So now Wes works for me. So when I was 18, I started this project-based work. Like literally, we were just like buddies. Like it sounds weird, but like I'd go hang out with him and his uncle's horse farm, and like we'd go whatever, do our thing, and I'd just chat with him. And he saw that I was in this transition period. Like I'd be doing these projects. Yeah. So this is another thing I want to add so people understand how this stuff works in real life. Throughout the time that Wes went and worked for someone else, I would start getting into these bigger projects, and I'd be doing estimates, sending him videos like, yo, dude, and this wasn't every time. This was really with 2 projects. Like, yo, what's the deal with this? What's the deal with this? So he would stop by, and basically I would hire him on the weekends with him and his tractor. I'd pay him $500, and that's how I could get these bigger projects and comprehend it and digest it. Essentially, is because I had someone more experienced with me. So then 18, I started the project-based work, sold the lawn mowing off. At 19, Wes, we're staying in contact. He had gotten frustrated with his current employment, and basically I picked him up from there. And so literally when I hired Wes, it was in the early spring season, mid-March. It was literally just myself and him. So now as a single-man band, the year before, I probably made $250,000, give or take, maybe even a little less. I then hired someone, took a risk, a salary. His total cost to the company cost over 6 figures, and made a leap of faith. And basically, like, I put my eggs all in, and we've been reaping the rewards since.
Man, that's huge. Yeah, I remember seeing one of your clips where you talked about how important it is to hire skilled labor, people that are hardworking and that are consistent. And I want you to expand upon that a little bit, because obviously the temptation is, hey, my buddy needs a job. I'll give him a job. And, some of that I think is good and, isn't inherently bad. But especially what you're talking about when it comes to expanding, when it comes to taking risks, when it comes to taking on more complicated jobs, the advantage of having someone that is more experienced is huge. And what have you found? Have you found that to be true? Has that been a key part of growing your business?
100%. So as I'm sure you know, it's one thing to go out and do a spring cleanup, trim, prune some shrubs and trees, and plant a bush or two or something like that. If you want to stay at that level, go hire your buddies and whatnot and pay them. But as you grow this business, you're going to start getting requests that get more and more complicated, and having a network, right? So not only if you connect with someone experienced, that experienced person in that industry has a web of other people. And so, it's super important, because then as your business rises, you get those new requests. Maybe you don't know how to do something. He doesn't know how to do something. He can go lean on his guy and say, yo, what should we do here? That type of thing.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, that's huge.
And not to cut you off, Nate, what I wanted to add to that about hiring experienced people versus just your buddies, anyone can pick up a pitchfork and put mulch into a wheelbarrow. What you're gonna realize as a business owner, and I've done this, I did this for years before I was 19 and hired an experienced person. You look at the numbers and you're like, all right, well, this guy that knows what he's doing wants $25 an hour, let's just call it. But your buddy's like, I'll work for $18 an hour, tomorrow. You look at the short-term dollar, and I think what I'm trying to get guys to realize is, like, let's put our businessman, head on and look long term. When you hire an experienced person, there's very little training. You know what I'm saying? You show them a
Exactly.
job, they know what to do. They know where the tools are. They know how to use the tools the most effective way to make their per hour wage worth it, right? They're using the tractor to move mulch and not the wheelbarrow. And so, take a little bit of risk, get out of your comfort zone, go hire the experienced person. It'll change your business.
No, it's huge. It's huge. I found the same thing to definitely be true. For me, what's been tricky for me is I made the mistake, arguably, of going to college, which I think would be an interesting subject to talk about real quick, or real long,
How old are
depending
you,
on how
Nate?
it goes. 22.
Okay. So we're the same
How old
age.
are you?
We're the same age.
Oh, we are? There you go. There you go. Yeah, so I guess I won't get into the weeds as to the whys and whys not. But yes, I went to college and still am in college, almost done, for industrial and entrepreneurial engineering. So it's actually, what's useful about it is there are aspects of it that directly pertain to what I do, which is rare to get out of college, in my opinion. But what it's done is I've been playing a 50-50 game, or at least it's been splitting my attention between the business and trying to go to school. And engineering isn't exactly easy. So it's difficult to dedicate 100% of your time to something like this. And one of the other clips I came across that you focused on was that if you want to start a business, you have to be willing to be the person that's going to be there 24/7, essentially. You have to be willing to put in the time and be on top of things in a way that a lot of people aren't necessarily willing to do. And juggling both of those things has been extremely difficult. Now, I have managed to do it, but it's been a massive detriment to the potential growth of the business. So that was a long spiel, but basically how about you outline kind of your general thoughts about college, why one might want to go, why one might not want to go, and it could lead us to a couple different areas. So you want to start there?
Yes, sir. So most of the things I think about is in money and ROI. So if I'm going to invest my money or my time, what am I getting back for that? So
Yep.
let's just break it down. I'm going to ask you a few questions after this. Let's say I did go to college. Let's call my cost 50 grand might be high. I don't really know. Depends on what college, but 50 grand a year, right? With room and
Sure.
board. If I don't know what it costs, but 50,000 times 4 years, there's 200 grand I'm spending, that probably money I don't have at 18. So I'm going to go get in debt on college. So there's my one negative. Immediately there's no ROI. So then on top of the actual cost of college, you have this time suck, the 4 years that you're wasting in college. So and then I look at the opposite of what I did. I did not go to college. I fought hard against my parents. It was a big push in the beginning, right? Like,
Yep.
And you still get nudged at to this day at the dinner table. I don't anymore, but you used to. How like the little comments, oh, you should have went to college.
Oh, I know.
You know what I'm
Yep.
saying? So there's the 4 years, the 200 grand, and so in that time, I've obviously profited way more than 200 grand. And built a business that has to be worth something. I've taken my cash, invested into real estate stocks, all sorts of stuff. And so now, Nate, I'm at 22 with a multi-million-dollar business. I have a real estate portfolio, and I'm looking at my peers, right? So I'm looking at my peers that are now graduated college, and they have college debt. They're still living at home, and a lot of them, Nate, it's kind of shocking. Two of people that I know went to a very nice school, and they make like $22 to $25 an hour. One's a some sort of computer degree, and the other is like in agricultural. And it's like, I'm sitting there like, why? I just sit there, and so why? So that's how I think about it. I'm a blessed individual that I didn't go to college. Nate, what do you spend on college per year?
Sure. So I have quite a few scholarships, which helps the cause. Initially, when I had room, I guess let's just average it out. Probably 20K. Let's average it out there. So 80K over 4 years, roughly speaking. I'm going to be about 4.5. So let's do 100K just to round it up.
Yep. And so it's 100 grand, and then what do you delegate like per week to college, time wise?
Time wise, well, I take summers off for obvious reasons. Time wise, it depends. I would say 35 probably 35 hours, probably on average.
What
argue.
did you profit, let's just say, last year in your landscaping business?
Do you want percentages or numbers?
Numbers.
Numbers, 75K.
So let's just say that if you didn't go to college and you worked twice as hard in your business, if you're doing 35 hours in college, let's say you're doing 35 hours a week in your business, you profited 75K going to college times 4. So, and you're spending, let's say, $100,000 on college, you could be up $400,000 at 22.
Oh, yeah.
As an entrepreneur.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, that just puts it in perspective. Obviously, I'm sure you know this.
Sure.
You sound like a smart guy.
Do.
So,
no, I'm well aware of the numbers. Your ROI analysis makes perfect sense. I've been looking at this.
You'd be almost at $500,000 richer.
Oh yeah, oh for sure. So it is a fairly complicated discussion. So I'm with you on the ROI. I think that there are examples of people that, for certain majors and for certain niches, it just makes sense. At least, maybe makes sense isn't even the right word. You're almost forced to go to college if you want to do those things. So if your path is an entrepreneur, yeah, not going to college makes a lot of sense. I know people that are studying entrepreneurship at school, and I pity them. but if, let's say
now,
that
what's your
in this
degree
case, yeah, so it's engineering.
Okay.
So engineering, if you want to be an engineer, which of course now in hindsight I don't really think I do, but if you do, you basically need to go to college. Same with medical school, same with certain other niche disciplines. But there's a number of issues we could talk about. Back quick to the financial, the current state of college, in my opinion, is completely unsustainable. So the cost has skyrocketed. The student debt crisis is massive. You have whole hosts of disciplines within the college atmosphere that have, if anything, negative ROI. You basically can't find a job with a huge percentage of them. So I'm basically with you on the college thing. Say though someone does want to become a doctor or someone does want to become an engineer, what would you say to them?
You gotta go to college, brother.
Yeah. Yep.
I
guess I'll go.
Not to cut you off there, Nate. So my stepsister is a doctor, and it's so crazy. I was just doing the math. I was at like a family function. We were just doing the math. She graduated and had her doctorate, so she was a full-time doctor. I want to say at 29. I want to say 29.
Yeah.
And she spent over $300,000, I think it was probably closer to $500,000 in education to get her degree. And when you're graduating, you make good money. Let's call it $300,000, give or take. But is the art again? And this is if you're going to be a doctor, you have to go that route. But if you're going to be if you think of it in business terms, dude, I got 9 years on you, 10 years actually since 18. I'm already in a better position. You know what I'm saying? If we're outweighing like someone at 29, 30 with starting a business at 18 versus someone going to college and being a doctor. But yeah, dude, there's all sorts of stuff, dude. It's a crazy world. What I realized from one of my mentors was anything that's financeable is going to cost a lot of money. Cars, houses, college, in our society, those 3 things cost a lot of money, and you can finance them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I hear you. One other interesting caveat here, too, which I want to get your thoughts on, is that we live in an age where information is not only free, but you can make a pretty coherent argument that if you want to learn something, you're actually better off going to online sources, going to YouTube, going to ChatGPT, for instance, to actually learn the thing rather than going to college. And it's this weird flip where it used to be that if you wanted to learn information, you basically had to go to a professor, you had to go to an institution. And yet today, basically everything is free. And one other quick note here is I'll remember in class, I'll have professors that are foreign, and I can't understand them particularly well. So I'll end up using ChatGPT to essentially learn the material as they're hypothetically teaching it to me in a much more coherent manner and much quicker. And it just goes to show the outdated model that college is. Have you experimented at all with ChatGPT, just as a curious question there?
I've been on ChatGPT a couple times, and ask, simple questions. But I
Sure.
haven't like, I'm sure there's people out there that are like on it all day or whatever, trying to implement something for their business. And I want to get to that point. And I think AI is going to be extremely, help a lot of businesses. I don't have too much experience with it. I want to have more. I don't have the time to, but I think there is going to be a big effect with businesses across the board.
Hmm. Yeah, it's definitely, you definitely have to allocate some time to it. Again, if you're in my situation in a classroom, it made more sense to actually use that than to rely upon the professor.
Right.
But what's coming down the pipes is going to be quite insane. And there's a bunch of different business tools that I've looked into. But again, it is that, time value of money. Do I want to allocate time to go do this right now? Or do I want to wait for the technology to improve? How do I
Exactly.
use my time? And I'm sure that you deal with this all the time. How do I use my time? Do you want to comment on that a little bit of, where do you allocate yourself and where have you essentially learned, like, look, this is where my time is most well spent? Because it's one of these challenges that I know entrepreneurs and myself have faced, which is, man, I just want to do everything. Man, I know I could do it better. Oh, I know I could do it faster. And yet what you find is that allocation is huge. You want to comment on that a little bit?
100%, Nate. So, like, obviously, I teach this in my CMG university, but like, your time is so important. You need to be spending it the right way. And I think the biggest hiccup, especially us guys, us dudes in landscape, lawn care, contractors, we are born, like, we're born hustlers, right? So we
Yep.
think as a hustler, as a worker bee, oh, I know I can go out and get that job done faster than those two guys, or I can go mow the 40 lawns faster than my two guys this week. I'm
Yep.
going to have them off. Business is a little slow, blah, blah, blah. I want guys to like raise up their thinking level, and I'm doing this. Obviously, there's always room for improvement, but have like a business time frame, all right, or a business mindset. All right, I should be spending my time on lead generation, so that's what I do, marketing, networking. I should be spending my time on sales, going out on appointments, guiding my clients, and sending them an estimate and following up. Like, so that's what I do. I have a project manager, I have a foreman. He deals with everything from getting the crews started in the morning, supplying materials, communicating to the clients on site. I have an assistant. She fields all the leads that come in, set my appointments. She sets my schedule. She does all sorts of other stuff. And basically, I'm doing promoting, I'm marketing, I'm selling. And the next step is to hire a salesman and then focus just on lead generation. Like, just challenge yourself to be a businessman. Think longer term and less about the current dollar. But yeah, dude, it's either health or my business. I'm either working on myself or on my business.
No, it's huge. Yeah, while you mentioned the health component, let's quick talk about that. So I've noticed this as well, is the back to this time argument is it's tempting to think that, okay, I'll get one less hour of sleep and then I'll get one more hour of work done. Or it's tempting to think, you know what, I'll skip the gym today and I'll go get another 2 hours of work in. And what I have found is that when I do those things from a broad perspective, I actually end up being less efficient, getting less done. So I've noticed that when I focus on my own health, I end up being more productive in business, not less. Has that been your experience, and what do you think about that?
I agree with that 100%. I think for a number of years, I did what you just said. Oh, I'm going to stay up
Yep.
till 1 o'clock, send out estimates. I'm going to go get up like at 5, 6, all that kind of stuff. And it's like, you can only do that for so long. And then you start to realize, like, at least I do. I value my health more than I value my business, right? So I'm valuing me. So now it's just ingrained in me, dude. Whether I got 15 estimates on my list today, I'm still going to get my workout in. I'm still going to go to sleep. I'll do it the next day. Now, that's not a lazy thing. I'm fitting as much as I can in the time period that I have. But yeah, dude, you have to value your health. That's one thing I definitely learned. So long story short, I also had a kidney transplant at the age of 20. So
Oh, wow.
going through this growth phase of my business, and then going through this whole transition from basically having my original kidneys fail, and then finding a donor, getting a transplant, going through that process, dude, 100% hands down made me realize, like, my health is the number one thing, hands down.
Man, yeah, I can totally see how that kind of experience would really change your perspective on it. So I'm glad to hear that you've recovered and made some lateral moves there. So that's good to hear.
Yeah.
Okay, kind of a random question, but do you have a favorite like book, author, someone that's really helped you in the business world?
I don't necessarily have a favorite, but I will say in 7th grade, I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And
Yep, Robert Kiyosaki.
Yep.
Sorry to cut you off, but yeah, it's such a good one.
No, right?
Yep.
And I was so like, I don't know. I was probably just so young. And I was like, I was going around telling my teachers, telling my peers, like, I'm rich. Like, because I read this book, I literally thought I was rich. Like, it was like some mind thing. And obviously I learned, all right, well, now I got to go like do the business. Now I got to go invest in real estate. But I think reading that book at such a young age and then like believing that since I had the knowledge, I'm just rich, that like, maybe that's what sparked all this at a young age.
Yeah, no, that's huge.
How about you,
that's
Nate? What's your favorite book?
Well, you kind of stole mine, but that would probably be my favorite in the business finance world. I have an interesting relationship with the moral self-improvement dimension. I would say probably number one in that dimension would be Jordan Peterson, 12 Rules for Life. Are you familiar with that?
I am. I haven't read it, but I've definitely heard of it.
Yeah, he's huge. Highly recommend Jordan Peterson to anyone. I like to put it this way. He helps put the why behind what you should do in life. In the moral dimension, I don't know your religious background, but sometimes I think classical religious institutions such as church sometimes will miss out on explaining the why behind the moral law or whatever it happens to be. And I think that is a huge error, because I think the why is critical, especially for someone that's questioning like myself. It's critical to provide the backbone to help actually propel you to do what you should do and what you need to do. So yeah, highly recommend Jordan.
Are you non-religious, or where do you stand on that?
Do you have 2 hours? It's a complicated question. I appreciate you asking. I'll do a succinct version because I want to get to a couple other topics too. In short, I think everyone's religious. I think the religious dimension, some people would, it depends on how you define it, but some people would categorize the religious dimension as explicitly action-based around whether you go to church or whether you're Catholic.
Right. So
or things like that.
Do you pray or do you talk to God at all?
Those are even more complicated questions. I have a version of prayer that I find to be useful and meaningful. Now, does that mean that I know if I'm talking to a God? I don't know. That's unanswerable in some sense. It's the concept of a God that like cares about my everyday actions is hard for me. The concept of a God that's the idea of objective truth or the idea of objective moral standards related to the concept of God, that's much more easy for me. I know it's a little complicated, but does that make sense at all?
So it sounds, and correct me if I'm wrong. Do you pray, Bible verses and stuff like that, or what?
I wouldn't say so.
What do you like? You mentioned you have like select tracks or something like that. What does that mean?
So I'll give an example. So imagine that you sit on the edge of your bed at the end of the day and you think back, okay, how did I present myself today in what I did and what I say? Was I integrated as a person? Did I miss the mark, so to speak? Did I lie? Did I do something that I knew to be wrong but did anyway? If you ask that question in a genuine manner, and you want an answer, I think you get an answer. And where that answer comes from, in what form, I think is mysterious and I don't know. But that's a version that I can get behind. Does that make sense?
That does.
Yeah, so there's a heavy dose of like psychology in there, so it's not totally clear to me how much of that, how much of the religious domain crosses with the psychological domain in that case. But in terms of like a tangible way that I would describe prayer, that's what I would describe it as. Not as wish fulfillment, not as saying, God, please help me with this problem. Something that provides an answer in a tangible way. So, what would you say? While we're on this topic, what's your background in this dimension?
So I grew up Catholic, and I
Yep.
went to CCD. All that, I call it bullshit, honestly, because it was just horrible.
Yep.
And so then I fell out of religion for a number of years. I stopped talking to God. I didn't go to church for a number of years. And so this is a great point to circle us back, is going through my whole health thing with the kidney transplant.
Yep.
I don't know what clicked in my head, and well, I do know, like multiple situations occurred back to back, and that's how at least my belief in God like completely lit, like a light switch just went off. And so ever since then, I talk to God, I pray, I do different things. Now I don't go to church, but it's more or less like some sort of relationship, and I thank him for the basics and all kind of stuff. So I was just curious if you did, what type of relationship I guess you had. But I believe God helped me and did some miracles as far as time-wise stuff, and just showed me, different blessings. As weird as it might sound, I think my whole thing with the kidney transplant was a blessing because it allowed me to escape the day-to-day of my business. And so I had no choice but to put systems and processes, Excel spreadsheets, the way we do things, to my assistant, to my manager. I had to train him how to do estimates, all while I'm literally dying of kidney disease, figuratively. Obviously, you can go on a machine or get a transplant, but
Sure.
Which was kind of a blessing because now I have a lot more freedom and stuff like that.
Yeah. No, that's a very interesting and what would you say, healthy way to look at a situation like that. So I'm glad that you were able to get through that. It is interesting how it kind of forced you to allocate, and which again, it's not that I would wish. This is the interesting thing about tragedy and suffering in the world. It's like I don't wish it upon anyone, but when you reflect back upon it, generally those moments of hardship were the moments in which you improved the most, or where life became more tangible in a way that forced you to confront things that you were leaving in the dark, let's say. And it sounds like you had at least somewhat of that experience. Would you say that's true?
Dude, I would put that 100%. I can't agree with those words more, dude. That's 100%.
No, that's really cool. And we'll stay on this topic a little bit longer if you don't mind. You don't go to church, that's right?
I don't consecutively. I'll maybe go once, twice, 3 times a year.
Gotcha. Okay. What's your family background in that dimension then?
So mom's side is not religious. Dad's side is. Growing up, we went to church every Sunday till we got to 11, 12, 13 or something. But that's the background.
Gotcha. Okay. So would you say that you've had to kind of find your own path in a sense?
Yes. Now,
Yeah.
yes, within the past, 3-4 years. But I think finding the path was a lot easier because I had that background of going to CCD, of going to church.
Yep.
So that's all I got there. But yeah.
Yeah, you had some scaffolding. It wasn't completely novel.
Exactly.
So, no, that's huge. No, it's really cool to hear that you have re-embraced, let's say, a authentic version of, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but perhaps faith, and at least a relationship with God or relationship with the divine that has propelled you in a positive manner. That's really cool to hear. So I'm glad to hear that.
100%.
So, cool. Yeah, and it's a topic that I think more people need to talk about. So I'm glad you brought it up. I think we run the risk of allocating the religious domain to the back burner, to kind of ignore it. And as you have found, from what it sounds like, that was something, even within the tragic experience, it elevated it to a higher degree, and now you're changed as an individual for the better because of it. And I think that's huge. So it's really cool to hear.
Yeah. I look at it as a blessing, as weird as that sounds.
Yeah. No, it's huge. Cool. Okay, so let's switch here a little bit back to the business world. I had a quote I wanted to bring up. Do you know who Alex Hormozi is?
Yes.
Yep, love the guy. So I love following him. His content is so good. Every time I'm like, man, you just blew my mind, which is huge. He had this quote. I want to hear your thoughts on it. Pretty simple. Being poor sucks more than working hard. And I was like, man, that's so true. And tying into what you're talking about, the allure of college to some extent is it's almost like an extended adolescent period, because you don't really take on the same responsibility you would as an adult with a full-time job. You're in this somewhat protected environment where you basically don't have the same responsibilities. You're living with friends and separated from your parents. So the allure of that is huge, and you don't really have to put in the work in the same extent, depending on the discipline. And that clip made me, or that quote, I suppose, made me think of college specifically. And from what you've said, you took the opposite approach. You were pushing hard in the business dimension. I want you to talk a little bit about, well, you can comment on the quote too, but like, talk to me a little bit about those dark days where it had been an 18-hour day, where things had gone wrong. What did you do to kind of motivate yourself to get out of that hole?
Great question, Nate. I do remember those days, like especially when I was like 13 to 17, where like I remember some mulch jobs, I just didn't know what I was getting into, and I'd be there till dark, like short sleeves, and I'd come home at 9:30, covered in black dyed mulch, and just like, I'm only making $300 off this, and I'm like, you sit there, you're losing money, you're like, what the hell? I don't know, I think I just trusted the process and kept it going. There were so many times when I wanted to quit, but I just kept it going. So the why behind that, I think, is just my will of just like keep pushing and keep pushing. Mm-hmm. Same thing to this day. Like now I started a real estate company, and like I'm out there like not passing inspection because of a stupid fire alarm in one room, and it's like, dude, like I could have went out and sold a $25,000 project within the time of me scheduling this, meeting the guy, having my contractor come back, and it's just like you want to give up, but now that I have fruition, I can see the future. All right, it might not be worth my time for this one property, but now I know this skill, so when I go do a 15 unit, 12 unit, I know what I'm going to be dealing with. So I think I just looked past the short term and focused on the long term.
Yeah, no, that's huge. That decision to actually just keep going in those situations, I think, is the critical decision that people have to make in the entrepreneurial dimension. And again, I want to say this too, is it doesn't mean necessarily that you're going to succeed. It doesn't mean that you're going to have a multi-million-dollar business. You might fail in that dimension. But what I would argue is, in that process of failing, you actually win. Because if you're doing it right, you're going to take away lessons and skills that you're going to be able to use in whatever venture you do in the next year, or whatever it happens to be. What have been a couple of your biggest points of failure that you were able to learn from and then improve from?
Great question, Nate. So a couple things. Pricing, right? Like I just mentioned, I was doing a massive job for $300. I had to pay my friends to come help me just to get it done. I lost money on that. So the pain of that made me never underbid. I shouldn't say never, but made me learn my numbers a lot more.
Oh yeah.
And then like, as I was growing and I hired my buddies and stuff, there was this one guy that was like a killer, like would work and he won a little bit more money than the other kids, but was way better. And I said, like, no, dude, like I can't. If I pay you, they're all gonna want more. And so he never, he still worked for the rest of like what I needed him for, I guess. But that lesson was like, all right, always, if it's worth it, pay the person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, that's huge. Knowing, back to the conversation we had previously, knowing the value of someone that's working hard is massive, and then rewarding it as such. That's huge. Okay. Let's see. So that hit a lot of the main points I wanted to talk about. You also mentioned that you're in real estate. Talk to me about what got you into that. Was that all the way back from Rich Dad Poor Dad? And how's that been like?
Yeah, so that was back from Rich Dad Poor Dad. I think all of this
Oh, yeah.
started because I wanted to get into real estate, and back then I thought I needed money. So I started my business to save money for real estate. And so when I was 16, 17, I had gotten pre-qualified and approved for a loan that my mom would co-sign on. I'd be the money person. She'd be the co-sign. So we started looking at real estate when I was 16, trying to buy a property I could store my equipment at, blah, 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 blah. That fell through, never bought stuff. And so then fast forward to after my kidney transplant, I was like, dude, I'm blowing up my business and I'm putting all my money in real estate. So, well, actually, no. My first deal was right before I was 20, and July I signed an owner finance deal with my previous landlord. So I bought 32 acres off of him, gave him a chunk of money down. He financed the rest for a 10-year period with a chunk of it due at the end of the 10 years. So that was my first deal.
Gotcha.
Got out of the hospital, recovered. At that point, I was 20. And I had 2 years of my own income taxes showing that I made money. So I went and got a conventional loan, 5% down, bought a single-family house, worked on it, painted it, did some very basic stuff, rented that one out, lived at home. And then I've just been doing that. So then last summer I bought 2 more units in July. I bought this past winter, I bought a house, one single-family house. I completely redid that, roof, HVAC, some flooring, bathroom, and that one's rented out. And then my most recent is a 2-unit in Westchester. Did that, 5% down, big mortgage, but there's 2 units. There's the main house, which has a tenant in it, and then there's the 2-bedroom above the garage. So that's my real estate portfolio. It's worth just under $2 million. Not everything's appraised right now, so it could be more, could be a little less. But that's kind of my brief story.
Cool. Do you see the landscaping business as essentially the financer of the real estate, or do you see them more as working together?
It's probably working together just because I have this from a client today, but I take all my cash and not all of it, but essentially what I do is delegate, big chunks of my money that I make from my landscaping business. I put them into cash accounts. So I'll wire money at the end of every month into a cash account. So when I log into my bank on my cell phone every day, I look at my business accounts. So I look at them and be like, oh shit, I got to get more money into there. It makes me hustle more. And then I put chunks of my money into cash accounts I don't see every day, but I kind of know what's in there, obviously. And then I use that money to acquire the real estate. Now, not all that money's used. I need to get my deal flow up a lot more, but that's how I manage and invest my money into real estate.
Gotcha. Do you have a separate LLC for the real estate business, or is it all under the landscaping one?
Separate LLC.
Yeah, that's smart. And that helps keep things separate, of course, which is nice for tax purposes. Do you see single-family, multifamily homes as kind of your end goal? Or I'm thinking in the back of my head, I hear Grant Cardone shouting at me. Do you know who that is?
Yes, I know who that is.
Yeah, I hear him yelling at me to ask about apartments. So here I am. Do you see like apartments potentially as something on the horizon?
Dude, 100%. I'll get there.
Yeah.
Right now I would be great to get like 4 or 6. I'm currently working on like a 6-7 unit deal that my CMG landscaping business is going to buy as a shop / office / there just happens to be 4 apartments there, like, so that kind of thing. And where was I going with that? But yeah, bigger apartment deals, 100%, dude. I don't want to be effing around with some fire alarm and like a thing on an outlet. I want to be moving debt. I want to be pushing paper is what I always called it. I want to be taking the risk on this debt and making sure cash flows, have management into place, have the bookkeepers already in there, have my accountants attached to the business checking account, running the numbers, giving me my quarterly reports, right? And then I got, if I'm taking risk over here in this business, I know I have my cash account over here to float something if something goes south. Like that's how I think. But yeah, dude, bigger deals, 100%.
Yeah, no, that's huge. I heard him yelling at me, so I was like, I got to ask you about the apartments. But I see there's a large, obviously the downside of apartments is the massive, at least initial cost, and the potential risk of that debt. But real quick, we're on the topic of debt. The one thing that Rich Dad Poor Dad did for me was completely change my perspective about debt. And he made this distinction between good debt and bad debt. Do you want to kind of comment on, that distinction and just like debt in general and how you view it?
100%, Nate. Yeah, how I think about debt, and this is probably one of the big things of how I operate like my companies today. There's, like you just said, there's good debt. So what's an example of good debt? Maybe I have a 30-year mortgage on a property that after expenses, management, taxes, insurance pays me $500, $700 a month. That would be a good debt. That's you're making a bet with every investment, but that would be a good bet. And so if you can stack up 25 of those, that becomes like a safer investment bet, and your risk on that debt becomes lesser and lesser. Then there's like my Corvette, right? That's technically a liability. It doesn't make me anything. Maybe it gets me some attention on the internet. Maybe it gets some attention around town when I'm pulling up to places, but it doesn't directly pay me. And so how I finance my stuff is like my toys, like my Corvette and other cars and things I've had, I always buy in cash. And my real estate, I try and put, not tons of debt on, but it's leverageable, dude. So I play with it a little bit.
Exactly.
And that's how I do it.
No, that's huge. That's huge for sure. That distinction, I think the American public is completely unaware of. I would argue that I was looking at statistics surrounding like your average car payment the other day, and it was, I cannot remember the number, but it was something just astronomical. And of course, the case with a car payment is, you could argue it's an asset in the sense that it gets you to work to make money. But for most people, that's basically just a liability versus something like a truck for a company that's 100% basically write-offable, depending on taxes and whatnot. But it's actually bringing you money from a cash flow perspective. And this conversation about debt, finance, and everything like this is just so lacking, I would argue. And I believe I think it's less than 50% of U.S. states require any kind of financial education course in high school. And I think that's just a travesty. Like the fact that we don't do that. What do you think about that financial education piece?
I couldn't agree with that more, dude. It's like I had to go search for other things outside the school system. Rich Dad, Poor Dad, YouTube University, paying people to get around them to learn how they do it, and little tips and tricks. And it needs to be taught in the school system. Will it ever? Is it in my control? I don't know. While I have my knowledge and my execution, I'm going to take full advantage of what other people don't know, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I hear you.
Yeah.
What do you? So we touched on real estate, landscaping. You have the online social media presence. What else you got going on? You mentioned a CMG University or something like that?
Yeah. So, what I do on the top, I guess besides my landscaping and my real estate companies is I have a university where I teach landscapers, contractors, how to grow and scale their company. So whether they're trying to hit the $1 million mark and be profitable, whether they're just trying to launch and get out of lawn mowing and just into project-based work, or they're trying to grow their service-based business. So you could be a contractor, HVAC, electrician, you name it. I teach people how to make their businesses grow profitably.
Cool. What do you view the social media side of you as, I suppose? Do you view it as like a way to get more clients, as a way to get your name out there, network? I can see one of the reasons I started the podcast, for example, is along those lines. It's also just kind of a self-improvement endeavor. Podcasting is a little bit different, I suppose, than a traditional social media profile, but from what I can tell, it forces you to think of content that you generally find useful and then share it. So what do you view kind of the social media side of what you do as?
So, great question. For my landscaping business, it produces some leads. It's really just to, it's not a big, well, I shouldn't say that. A lot of my leads do come from social media, whether it's my Facebook personal or Instagram. Maybe it's TikTok. When the lead comes in, it just says social media, so I don't know. And then on Chase Gallagher's side, my personal side, I'm really just building a personal brand. So all the time and the money I spend on social media, going to the studio, paying producers, editors, cameramen, it's one of those things, Nate, when I think back to when I was 13, covered in black mulch at 9:30, I'm not getting a direct ROI back on it today. I'm just focused like, dude, I know the really successful people keep talking about personal brand. They wish they started earlier, so that's what I'm doing. And then out of that just comes other profitable stuff, CMG University, different sponsorships, connections, dude. Like it's crazy.
It's huge.
It's a blessing.
Yeah, no, it's amazing what can come with something like that. That's also something that I've thought about pushing more into. So perhaps you'll convince me, and I'll keep going there. But cool, man. I guess we'll do two more questions first.
And then I got some questions for you at the end.
Oh, okay. All right, sweet. Work-life balance. What do you? I have a weird relationship with this question. I think Hormozy said it well. He's like, well, what if my work is what I enjoy the most? And I suppose that's an interesting argument. I guess the counter would be like, okay, but family, but you really should have other priorities in life than just work. And one of the things that you will sacrifice, and I'm sure you've realized this, is you will sacrifice relationships sometimes, personal stuff that you wish you could put more time into for the sake of the business. Now, if you play it right, that doesn't mean it has to get burned. It doesn't mean those relationships have to die or anything. But I've noticed that is always a constant struggle. How do you navigate that today?
Great question. So, I mean, basically my work-life balance is kind of like this. When I'm in town, when I'm in my area, I have very structured routine. I'm getting up at 6:30. I'm going to my workout. I go get my coffee, go to the bank, and I get done usually those three things Monday through Friday. And then from there, I'm either doing sales appointments or I'm following up with clients, social media, networking stuff. And then literally I do that till 6, 7 p.m. Then I try to come home, eat dinner, go to bed early and repeat. So it's very, when I'm in town, I'm 100% go. And then on the weekends, I'm doing real estate, I'm doing social media, I'm doing more shit to get in front of more people. And then I just balance it out with, I travel every single month. So, I was just in Miami, I was just in Tennessee, California, Florida, I just travel, and when I'm out of town, I still work on my businesses, but it gives me, and this is so valuable, if you're listening, you don't do this, step out of your business. Maybe it's for a day. So I just went to Miami for a day, hung out at the rooftop pool, ate some great food, vibed, and I worked all my business. I got caught up on certain business things, and it improves you so much. So, but Nate, that's how I work it. I think it's important. And then on top of that, some of my vacations are with my family, so I get to spend time with my family.
Yep.
It'd be cool to go out and party more, but I'd rather take dude, when I go out, it costs me a couple $100. I don't know where you go to party and stuff, but if I'm going out to dinner, then getting drinks, then bar hopping, it could easily cost $500-600. I'd rather just go spend that on a real estate appraisal and be able to pull my $200,000 back out. I don't know.
No, I hear you. It's a constant battle, that one. Do I go out or do I work on stuff? And it's a good thing though to find the balance there.
How about you? So you're in college and you run a landscaping business. What does your routine look like?
Like on a day-to-day basis?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so unfortunately it varies due to class schedules and things like that. That's one reason that I love the summer, because I can focus just 100% of my time on the business. And back to, real quick, the ROI analysis is very true. One thing that I think is underappreciated in that analysis is that not only are you forced to work less hours on your business, but you end up missing out on opportunities that otherwise you would have taken, but you legitimately can't, assuming you want to graduate college, which I do. So it gets tricky, but I would say, so when I'm in college, it just depends on the day because the classes are horribly scheduled at random times. But most days I'm up by 7:30, and then whether I'm working, sometimes I go straight to class, other times it's straight to like desk work for the business. Again, it totally just depends on the time. So let's just quick do summer. So summer, I'm up by 7:30. I'm normally at the shop with the guys getting stuff ready to go. We have, just for reference, we have one mow crew that does 80, 85 accounts per week. There's some commercial big ones in there too. And then we have a landscape crew. And I do technically manage it all, although the mowing crew is pretty autonomous. And I know you're going to tell me to get rid of it and go project-based. And I do hear the analysis. As of right now, it's so, like, it's not even a headache for me, like 95% of the time, that I can't justify just scrapping it. Perhaps there will come a time when I do. And then I'll be normally on site, but then also running errands, going to clients, appointments, doing sales, stuff like that. Right now, I'm definitely over allocated in terms of being on job site. I'm currently looking for a foreman, project manager, someone that I can trust on the job site to oversee it so I don't feel like I have to be there. And school has made that, well, frankly, a bit to try and do. So the good news is I got some time. And sorry, go.
A couple questions for you, Nate. I'm assuming, correct me if I'm wrong, that where you go to school is the same area where your business is?
Yes.
Okay. Do you live on college or at home, like right next to your business?
I live off campus in an apartment, so not at home.
And like how just out of curiosity, how far is your commute to your shop?
15 minutes.
Oh, that's awesome. So what type of labor force do you have? Are you hiring new guys every single season or no?
Yeah, I'd say about 50%. So I normally have a couple guys come back, but then normally I'm hiring new guys, especially for the summer when landscaping starts really increasing. I'm hiring new people.
Are any of your guys Spanish-speaking individuals?
No.
So, okay. And so what else? So when did you start your company?
So it depends. I mean, if you mean the LLC, I think I basically took a similar path to you, 13, 14, mowing a couple neighbors' lawns, kind of took off from there. High school, I had a trailer. My parents helped me buy a truck, mowing lawns, doing mulch, that kind of stuff. So I guess probably started the LLC like 4 years ago, I'd say. So right at the start of college.
And so when you're in college, then you mentioned that was your summer schedule. When you're in college, do you have certain days where you don't have any classes, and that's when you're like, all right, I'm going to do all my sales appointments then, or how is it working?
Yeah, so it's kind of fitted in when I can. There are certain days where I don't have class. I think it's like one day normally per semester where I don't have class, 1 day per week rather. So then I really can allocate more time. But I'll try and when I have classes, I'm just scheduling stuff when I can for like appointments.
How many people work for you full time?
Right now, 4.
And just like you said, so 2 of them are doing landscaping all week, and 2 of them are mowing lawns.
Yep. And we have, real quick, this is why I need to expand. We have the work. Like, I have probably 2.5 months-ish of work with the 2 guys and me as of right now. So we have the work.
What type of projects are you doing?
So primarily what I would call landscape installs. So client wants new landscaping. Either they have some that's run down and they want it revamped, or it's a blank slate, it's a new house, something like that. Right now we're doing, I would argue, our first large-scale retaining wall. So that's, probably a $50K job. So that was pretty big for us. I have a couple hardscaping jobs that I think I'll get, but I've traditionally not done that. But I want to get into that because I see that as the higher ROI.
Did you have a designer do your wall or these planting projects, or who designs it?
Yep. So I'll do some of the designs if it's simple, and I think you as you start to catch an eye for things. That doesn't mean you're a trained designer, but you start to catch an eye for things, and you can be like, "Yep, okay, we should put some boxwoods there," whatever it happens to be. So if it's a fairly simple job, and I'm like, "Yeah, I can take this on. I got some good ideas. I'll do that. I'll just use like Icecape. I don't know if you've heard of it.
I've heard of it. I've never played with it, but I should check it out.
For small stuff, it's great.
Right.
I can take a picture and I can put in plants. It's great. Large stuff, I don't. So I have a designer that does designs for me for large scale projects.
What does he or she charge?
Depends. Probably for like a 10K plant install, maybe $300. For something in the 20 to 30K range, probably south of $1,000, depending on the scale.
Yeah, sounds right. So, and I'm just asking your questions. I'm sure it's going to turn into a conversation. I just like to I'm kind of gauging you up, if that makes sense.
Sure. Yep. No,
so
you're good.
What did your company do in revenue last year in 2022?
Last year was about 210K.
Okay, and what about the year before that?
90K.
Okay, and what about the year before that?
45.
Perfect, brother. And what about the year before that?
In high school, it was actually fairly steady because I couldn't, when you're in high school and you play sports, I would duct tape flashlights to the front of the mower, let's say. So we were doing everything we could, but it was a rough time. So around 20K probably most years.
Yeah,
I'd say.
That's awesome. So, and then what are you projected to make this year, or what have you, what will you make in the first 6 months revenue?
Mm-hmm. I would do projection for this year. I would say 400K is probably reasonable. The goal is 500K.
Yeah.
I always like to shoot a little higher, but if I doubled revenue, I'd be pretty happy with that while still going to college. So, yeah.
And then will you be done college? When will you be done college?
So unfortunately, it'll be in the spring. I have one of those pesky classes that's only offered in the spring that they forget to tell you about. So I gotta take one class next spring, so 2024. But then once that's over, I'm good to go.
That's awesome. That sounds like you're doing great for being in college.
We try. I see. Again, back to the college discussion, I see the path that you took, and I will admit I'm a little envious. But I had my reasons at the time, and I'm not going to betray my former self. But I have no doubt, I don't know if I'd be as successful as you, but I think that we'd be in a very different situation now, financially, business-wise, if I had. But
100%, dude. You'd be doing all project-based work, But yeah, that's my biggest thing I coach my guys on is moving into project-based work. And the analogy or the selling point is pretty simple. It's do you struggle finding skilled labor?
Yes.
All right. Just like I do. So why would I have the current trained team making me, let's call it two guys making me $50,000 a year in profit on my lawn mowing? Maybe it's a little less. It's probably a little less. I don't know, but let's call it that. Versus those two guys can profit me $100,000 per year doing project-based work.
Exactly. No, where are you going to allocate your skilled labor so that they're most productive and most efficient? Yeah.
Or making
you
the most money. And so it's it's just facts, just based off my history is all right, 2 or 3 guys mowing lawns can make anywhere from $1,000 to maybe, I don't know, $2,000 a day mowing lawns. I don't know. And
$1,000 is pretty reasonable for us, but continue.
Yeah, and then project-based work, dude, I'll have a 3-man crew plus my manager on one job site, and they'll bring in $4,000 in a day easily. Some days now, the way you can, do certain projects and combine them and whatnot, dude, 6 guys, give or take, can bring in $8,000 or $10,000 in a day. And so it's maybe you got $2-3,000 of material cost. If that, you got, $1,000 in labor, probably more than that. But, you're still profiting I'm profiting 3-4 G's in a day versus that, in a month or whatever with lawn mowing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, the financial analysis makes total sense. So I think, not to throw excuses out, but I'll throw a little bit of an excuse out. The engineering happens to be rather difficult, and the amount of time that it takes is ridiculous. So, and believe me, I've done everything I can to speed that up, but I'm definitely looking forward to the time when my brain is not half and half. That's been the hugest thing. Like trying to switch modes of like going from school back to work has been detrimental, I'd say. So,
what are your plans for the future when you graduate?
Yeah, so if it was my parents, I'd get a job in engineering, but I will not be doing that. So, I intend to go 100% in the business entrepreneurship route. So after reading, we're pretty similar. After reading Rich Dad Poor Dad, I was sold on the whole real estate thing. So that's kind of part of the end goal. I don't see that in the next 2 years. I see that maybe 3 to 4, depending on how things go.
Why is that?
Because, so under my current analysis, spending, so it's, this is a constant question of like, okay, where do you spend your time? And for me, from what I can tell, spending time fueling the business and putting any profit back into the business right now and scaling it makes the most sense. I could allocate, $20K for a down payment on a house and maybe net $500 per month from that, or I can allocate that $20K as for a new truck and then hire 1 to 2 guys, and I got a whole nother operation going.
So you mentioned you made like 75 grand, I think it was last year or something like that.
It was about 90, but yeah.
What do you do?
Oh, profit. Sorry.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, profit was about 75. Yeah.
What do you do with that profit? Where is that money right now?
Mm-hmm. So I suppose, like the real answer is I could have profited 75K. What I ended up doing is I'd say at least half of that money went back into the business.
Okay. So you're reinvesting that let's call it 30 grand. What did you do with the other money?
Paid for life, mainly. I would say mainly paid for life. Some of it, we'll just go with that for now. I mean, I can go into specifics, but
yeah, just partying, going out, probably like food.
Yeah, I will fully admit, too much of that. So, yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, everyone delegates their cash differently. I don't know if this will help you, but, I'm sure you've been in business for 4 years now, so you have business credit. I leverage my equipment, right? My trucks have payments. My machines have payments. Certain stuff obviously don't. Trailers, certain other equipment. And so like I'm a big do it both guy. If you could figure out how to do it both,
yeah,
then do it both. I was never in the issue where like I had to choose between my business or real estate. I always just saved my money and just like, oh, we need a new truck trailer, boom, we got that. Oh, we need to spend a couple grand in Google Ads this month. I got that, and I'm still gonna buy this house. And so I don't know, trying to figure out how to use like business credit in a healthy way to like maybe you don't put as much money down on certain stuff, and that way, Nate can go buy a house and not have any, debt on his name and buy all the leverage shit in his business's name. That's what I do.
Yeah. No, I hear you. Yeah. Leveraging those assets that are still paying, still making payments on.
How do you price out your work?
Like, what do you mean? Like landscaping jobs?
Yeah. What's your process of building an estimate?
So it has changed over the years. Basically, I mean, there's so many different things that go into it. I'll have, as you know, over time, you start to kind of know how long things take on average. But what I've done is I essentially have an Excel spreadsheet with basic estimates for, how long does it take to put in 10 feet of edging, that kind of thing. And I'll calculate that, multiply it by a labor rate, come up with a rough number, and then go through it, put in plant costs, all those kind of things. I'll have a set price per plant if it's a 5-gallon versus a 3-gallon, that kind of thing. And then of course you got to factor, and then there's the other factors of like, okay, what's the access to the site? Can I use heavy equipment? What kind of heavy equipment? Is this how much am I going to have to seed afterward? So there's a bunch of different components, but I try and keep it relatively systematized so that I'm not going to be massively off, if that makes sense. So,
yeah, I think that's great. I think, Do you know what your business's yearly overhead is? Do you know that number like that?
I don't.
Okay.
Which, before you tell me, is bad. I know it is. It's one of those things that like I need to get on, but as I'm sure you're aware, those kind of things I'll put off, and that isn't. I'm not claiming that's an excuse, but yeah, it's just the reality right now is I don't.
No, totally, brother. If I were to like suggest anything for you and your business and for you to make more money, this has multiple of my students talk about this like on our call today. It was just like, dude, this transformed my business. What I would do is, you're an engineer, brother. You would do this probably 10x better than I would do. Is put down on an Excel spreadsheet like your yearly overhead, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's one number. You're gonna line it out. What is your payments, insurance, shop rent? I mean, there's a whole list of stuff. Maintenance, fuel expense, approximately. Always add more to it. Miscellaneous extras. So put all that, get that number. My number is $405,000 a year. Then your second number is how many days out of the year can Nate work, right, in Michigan? So you got to take out snow days, you got to take out the winter bullshit, and then you're gonna divide your overhead by how many days you can actually work, and that's a starting point, right? That's where you start. That number has to be covered after material costs, after labor, after owner's profit. Then that number comes, and so like that's how we bid it is if it's a half day or a full day. I know my crew's daily overhead rate is $4,000 plus materials. So if I know it's going to be a 1-day project, plus I got $25,000 in cedar to build raised garden beds, that's $6,500. Then I got Riverstone around it. There's another $500. Commercial weed fabric, $500. And next thing you know, 4 raised garden beds cost the client $8,500. But that's how you know like you're going to make money.
Yeah. No, that's definitely the best way to do it. And I do know how to calculate those numbers. It's a matter of getting into the numbers and actually doing it. So
I mean, you could do it in 5 minutes with a piece of paper.
Mm-hmm.
So anyways, I just wanted to, if I could provide you value in any way, or if you have any specific questions for me, dude, let me know, because people are going to watch this and be like, it's going to click, brother. And they're going to be like, holy shit. And they're probably going to sit there, like, listen to this podcast, writing the numbers down.
Yeah. No, I hear you. Not necessarily as if, well, okay, let's go here. So one thing that I've been trying to figure out is if I should or should not get into snow. So I'm not into snow right now. And the main reason is because it turns out that you can't call your professor at 3 a.m. saying you're going to miss the exam because you have to go work. So, and then, the counter argument is, okay, well, then why don't you have someone to work? And then my thing is like, I've yet to have people that I can trust that are that consistent that will stay year round. So one of my goals this year is to find someone that might be able to do that. But what do you think about snow?
Great question, Nate. So snow's like what in my areas we call it a necessary evil, right? Like, It's like, dude, I got a $400,000 of overhead. I need something in the winter that's going to pay me something. And so I already bought the $85,000 truck. Why not outfit it with $15,000 worth of snow equipment? And maybe or maybe not, it can make me 25, 50, 100 G's that winter. So here's what I'll say about snow, and I think you're probably at the tipping point where it's like maybe you don't get into snow this winter because, like you said, you can't call your professor. But next year, this coming spring, you should start thinking about it, because it's an asset allocation. So at the end of my season, I can go invest $15,000, $25,000 or more into snow equipment. So it's a write-off. And number two, it might, and it depends how you structure it, turn your business into a business that produces revenue 12 months a year. Especially in Michigan, your season's shorter than mine. So if I can figure out revenue streams that's going to give me money year round, like certain commercial snow contracts do, the one contract I have pays me $7,500 a month, whether it snows or not, from November to the end of March. I think it is. It's like $38,000 or something like that. Okay, so that snow contract is feeding my checking account throughout the winter when not much is coming in, and so that helps bulletproof my business. And so, what I would do is you got to be at a certain level to like certain revenue, which you're getting there. Obviously, you're at a $500,000 or whatnot. Like, just delegate in your books. Just know, all right, I'm going to, invest 15 grand. If you already got the truck, you need the plow, you need the salter, maybe you need a pusher box on your skid steer, and then go out to small businesses. So how I do it, and if anyone's listening, you grow like a snow portfolio. So maybe you're not like this in your first year, but how once you're in it for a couple of years, like snow brokers will reach out to you. You take up ones, you don't take other ones. But basically, I have like 7 or 8 commercial snow contracts. One of them is the seasonal contract, so it pays me whether it snows or not. The other 6 or 7 are per push, so per salting event, per snow thing, and that's how you like balance out a snow portfolio.
Okay. Yep. No, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. I like the term necessary evil. I think that's hilarious, but also true. And yeah, that's a very good point. So,
and not to keep rambling, but
no, you're good.
If you can find a business model, like I know some guys do the lighting, right? I haven't been able to get my feet in that, but I want to. And so it's like, if you have a great team, maybe lighting is like, not landscape lighting. We obviously do that, but the Christmas lighting, because maybe that's your solution. If like you don't have to put the whole capital into the snow business, you don't have to have the wear and tear, the maintenance on that. You just store lights, put them up, put them down. Like maybe that's your winter months revenue. I don't know, but another thing I do is create a winter fund. So especially in Michigan, throughout the summer months, I am delegating cash. I'm moving cash from my business's checking into a separate account from savings from these other accounts. It's labeled winter fund, and I know what my overhead expenditures are going to be in the winter. And so when my revenue stops in the winter, I leech from that account to pay my bills.
Yeah, and you're covered then. It's not a question mark, which is huge, which is why it's so important to know your numbers. So
exactly.
Yeah. No, I'm totally with you. I guess let's end on this. Any like advice to young entrepreneurs? Like, hey, any like tips, tricks? Like, hey, these are some resources, anything like that?
Yeah, if you guys want to follow me on my social media, I release videos about what I just spoke about during this podcast all the time. I'm Chase Gallagher on TikTok. I'm Chase_Gallagher_ on Instagram. I'm on YouTube. I do release long form videos here and there. And so you can do that. And my tip to young entrepreneurs is just get started, dude. Like literally just start. Stop thinking about it. Stop talking to your bros and buddies and parents about it. And go print out some flyers, go pass them out, wait for your first phone call, go out on the estimate, lose the estimate, not get the job, and then go pass out thousands of more flyers. And you know what I mean? Like, dude, just execute.
Mm-hmm. That's huge. Taking that first step and then the discipline to keep going. So, hey, really appreciate your time, Chase. Great conversation. Got a little one-on-one coaching there too, so I'll take it. Yeah, man, appreciate you coming on.
You got it, Nate. Thank you for having me.